In this video, we're going to focus on creating a development production server. So right now, yes, we do have a couple of ways to serve up our application. We have our dev server over here, and we have live server, but neither of these are really suitable for production. Remember, they come with a lot of stuff that enables them to do really cool things like live reload, automatically run Webpack. Not only is that not stuff we need in production, it also takes up resources to get all of that working. So what we're going to do in this video is create just a very simple Express server. It is going to be a small, about 14-line Node.js file that's going to be responsible for serving up our public directory in production. Once we have that server in place, we'll be able to actually take all of our code and get it on Heroku. So the first thing I am going to do in this video is close down all of the existing files. I'm also going to close all the directories, and we're going to make a new root directory. We're going to make a new folder in the root of the project called server, and in here, for now, we're just going to add a single file. That file will be called server.js. Now, you might not need the server folder if you really just have one file, but I do want to give you a place to expand out the server should you want to. You can take all of your server code and toss it inside this folder. For our purposes, we really just need one file, and we really just need 15 lines of code. Now, the tool that we're going to use to create this server is called Express. Express is a fantastic tool for creating web servers with Node, but it's also a really big tool. There are literally entire courses just about Express. So what we're going to focus on in this video is not mastering Express. We're just going to walk through the very fundamentals to get something that works. This isn't a Node course, and I don't want to spend too much time focused on that stuff because I do want to spend as much time as possible on more advanced React topics. So to kick things off, I do want to make you aware of where you can learn more about Express. If you do mess around with Node, you are going to run into it. We can head over to the browser and go to expressjs.com. Here, there is a ton of great information. We have getting started guides, we have more advanced guides, and we have a complete API reference. We're going to be using version 4, the latest, and this is going to give you literally every single method and function call available to you by Express. As I mentioned, we're just going to be focusing on the very fundamentals. Things like this: importing Express, creating a new Express app, telling it where our public folder is, and then just starting up the server. To kick this process off, let's go ahead and install the latest version of Express into our application. I'm going to do that right inside of the terminal. That's going to be yarn add. We are adding Express, and we are adding the latest version 4.15.4. Once we have this added, we can actually require it into our Node file and get the server up and running. So it's important to remember what we're doing here. This is not something that's going to run through Webpack. It's not something that's going to run in the browser. This is a file that we're going to run from the command line using the node terminal command, which we will be using in just a few moments. For now, what we're going to focus on doing is getting that server up and running. The first steps is to load in Express and actually create a new Express application. And those are the two lines we saw over in the documentation. So the first one is to create a const Express, setting it equal to. Here, we're going to call require, which is the Node way to import something, and we're going to be loading in Express itself. Now, the next thing we need to do is create a new instance of Express. We have the library in here, but we don't have a new app. To do that, we can make a const app and set it equal to whatever comes back from calling Express as a function. There is no need to pass any arguments inside of here, and at this point, we now have an Express application. Now, we do have to customize it. We have to tell it where our files live, and we also have to tell it what port it should listen on. So let's go ahead and knock that out, and we're going to start by telling it to serve up the public folder and everything inside. Right here, app.use. App.use is one way we can customize our Express servers, and we're going to be using this to register some middleware. Now, when I say middleware, all I really mean is something that runs for each request. So if someone makes a request to the server, we might want to run some code that logs something to the screen. If something makes a request, we might want to run some code that serves up that asset from the public directory. And that's exactly what we're going to do. And lucky for us, all of that code is built in. All we have to do is take advantage of a function that comes from Express. That is express.static. So you'll notice here that I am calling express.static inside of app.use. So we're going to take the return value from express.static, which is just a function, and pass it into app.use. Now, static also takes an argument. It takes the path to that public folder. So I'm going to create that variable up above, const public path, and we need to set it equal to the public directory path. Now, we're going to be using the path module, something we already used over inside of webpack config.js. Inside of here, we took advantage of path for things like path.join, which allowed us to join up the current directory with the public directory, and we're going to be doing something very, very similar over here in server.js. Once again, we just have to load in path, const path equals, then we will require it. Remember, path is built in, so there is no need to manually install this one. Down below, we can now set up that public path using path.join, the method we already know about. Now, the first thing we pass in is going to be the current directory, that is _ dir name. The second thing we're going to pass in is going to be the next part of the path. Remember, we pass in all of the various pieces to the path, and path.join puts them together. The next thing we're going to do is go up a folder. Right now we're in the server folder. We're going to go up a directory by passing in .. Then the third thing we want to do is actually get to the public folder. Right here, public. Now, once we do have all of this in place, the public path is all set up, and we can actually pass it right into express.static. I'm going to pass in public path, and there we go. We now have an Express application that is going to serve up all assets from that directory. The last thing we do have to do is actually start up the server, and we do that using app.listen. Now, when we do listen, we have to listen on a specific port. And right now, we're just going to use port 3000, a port that's available on all operating systems, something you should be able to attach to for development purposes without getting any warnings from your operating system. So right here, we're just going to pass in as the first argument 3000. This is the port that Express should use. And we are going to pass in a second argument too. This is a callback function, and it just gets called when the server is actually up. So we could just log a simple message to the screen. Right here, I'll pass in an arrow function, and I'll use console.log to log something like server is up. Perfect. So with this in place, we have a working Express server, and we can actually play around with this. So I'm going to save server.js and start things up. Over inside of the terminal, what we're going to do is run node. This is going to allow us to run a node script file, and we have one. We just created one. It is server.js in the server folder. Right here, space server /server.js. Now, when we run this, we should see our little message, server is up. If you do see that, that means your server did correctly start up, and we can actually head over to localhost 3000 to see what we get. I am going to switch over to a new tab, go to localhost :3000, and you can see right here that we are getting what? We are getting an empty screen because we have some errors over in the console. It's trying to grab our assets. Our assets do not exist, so we can actually go ahead and create them by just running the production build. From the terminal, I can shut things down and use yarn run build :prod. Once we do have all of the production assets in place, we will be able to rerun that server and hopefully see our application running without any issues. Now, there is still one more tweak we are going to make to the Express server, and we'll explore exactly why we need to make that tweak in just a moment. For now, though, let's just rerun the previous command to start up the server and give localhost 3000 a refresh. Right here, we can see our Expensify application, which is fantastic. If you are seeing this in place, then everything is indeed working as expected. Now, the problem I wanted to talk about was what happens when we switch pages. So let's go to Create Expense, and it works, right? We see the Create Expense page, everything looks great. But if we give things a refresh right here, we can actually see we're getting an error from the server, cannot get /create. So this is because there is no create file or folder inside of public. So what we need to do is fix that. We need to serve up index.html for all files that don't have a match. That's going to make sure that our browser router still works. If you remember, this is something we did inside of the dev server config. Right here, we set history API fallback to true. This served up index.html in the public folder every single time we got a 404. We need to do the exact same thing over here in order to make sure that /create actually works when you directly visit it. To do this, we're just going to add a single call right here to app.get. This lets us set up some function to run when someone makes a GET request to our server. And in our case, we need to call it with 2 arguments. The first one is the path. So in a regular application, I might have /create or /help, but we can actually just use an asterisk right here to match all unmatched routes. So if it is in the public folder, great, we'll serve that up. If it's not, we are going to serve up the same thing every single time. Now the second argument is a function to run, so we got to set that up as well. In here, we're going to be processing all of the unhandled requests, and what we need to do is just send back the index.html file in the public directory. Right here, we're going to get that done by providing the 2 arguments that this function gets called with by Express, the request object and the response object. The request object contains some information about the request. The response object lets you manipulate the response your Express server makes to whoever made the HTTP request. In our case, all we want to do is use a single method, that is response.sendFile. This is going to allow us to send that file back, and then we'll be done. We have our 15-line Express server in place. All we have to do is provide the path to that file. I am once again going to use path.join. We are going to join together the public path from above with, right here, index.html. So there we have it. I know we glossed over some of the details. If you do want to learn more about any of this, all of this is expanded on in the documentation, and there are a lot of great Express courses out there as well. What we just used right here, you can find over inside of the API reference page. We have application. Down below, we have app.use. We also used response. And on response, we have send file. Just a couple of the methods. Obviously, there are a ton of methods available to you. Express is a gigantic framework. At this point, though, all I want to do is restart the server and making sure that visiting the /create page works by default. Right here, I'm going to shut things down, start them up once again. And over inside of the browser, all we got to do is refresh localhost 3000 /create. This time around, we are indeed getting the correct page, which is exactly what we wanted. This is going to make sure that the app works regardless of what page the user enters on. That is where we're going to stop for this video. So let's take just a quick moment to recap. In this one, we learned how to use the basics of Express. We set up a 15-line server, and the server does a few important things. First up, we actually create an Express application. Then we tell it to use the public directory to serve up all of our static assets. We also say, hey, if what the person requested isn't in the public folder, just give them back index.html. Then down below, we told it to start up on port 3000. All of this gave us our production server. In the next 2 videos, we're going to focus on getting this entire application up on Heroku. There are a few things we need to do to get it ready for Heroku. We have to teach it how to run our node server and how to run Webpack. But once we're done, we're going to have a really nice, easy to use build process. I'm super excited to get to that. The next video is one of my favorites where you actually get your app live. So let's go ahead and jump over there.